Well, joining me now in Canterbury in the UK is Alex Ntung. He's an independent DRC analyst and author of the autobiography Not My Worst Day. In Brussels is Christoph Vogel, who's with the Conflict Research Programme out of the London School of Economics and Ghent University. And still with us from Kigali is Frank Habineza, the president of the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda. And of course, here in the studio, Rwandan ambassador to Turkey, Williams Nkurunziza. Let me start with you, Alex. So we have Felix Tshisekedi go and pay tribute at a genocide memorial. Massively symbolic, DRC leader doing this to commemorate and pay tribute to the victims of the genocide 25 years ago. Back home in the DRC, he faced some backlash. Some people said, well, you know, Rwanda caused a lot of trouble in the east of our country. They looted, they armed militias, they killed people. Is that an indication of just still how raw a lot of things are for a lot of people in DRC?
It is. I think what we saw last week was historical. I know is a message you can expect from any leaders who is responsible to a country that saw nearly 1 million people killed in 100 days. You would expect some moral kind of message, really, to acknowledge what happened. But going back to your question, really the backlash that he received is an indication to really what the divide country that he's leading, and how actually that division is very much directly linked to our neighboring countries.
Okay, yeah, and let me bring in Christoph here, because we talk of the neighboring countries. So we've got DRC, especially the east of the DRC. We've got Burundi, and we've got Uganda as well. Can we say that 25 years on, most of the geopolitical tensions that Rwanda experiences and the region experiences stem from the genocide of 25 years ago, and there's still a lot of unresolved stuff going on?
Well, it depends on how you see things exactly. If you want to start 25 years ago, obviously the exodus of the genocidal forces from Rwanda into what was then Eastern Zaire was a massive trigger of conflict and violence in Eastern Congo as well. However, despite that these genocide forces still exist, we also do have a lot of other reasons for conflict in Eastern Congo, some of which are originating even before the arrival of the Rwandan genocidaires, and others that have emerged in the larger conundrum of conflict ever since.
Let me circle back to the ambassador here. We see tensions with Uganda at the moment, tensions with Burundi, accusations that both countries are somehow, if not supporting, but at the very least giving refuge to forces that your country does not like. Is this a dangerous period that we're in?
It's a tricky period we're in, yes, and there is no question as to whether subversive elements that seek to destabilize Rwanda are receiving support in some of the countries that you mentioned. And we have had open discussion with these countries about these issues. We are interested in building peace within our region and building peace with our neighbors. Even though, and this is something that President Kagame has talked about, the elements of destabilization and the efforts to destabilize the country by forces that emanate from these neighbors are known.
Why do you think they're doing it? Why do you think they're doing it?
We don't know. But we have had a conversation with them. Our president has had a conversation with them to encourage them to not do it. Because what we're interested in is building peace within our region. And this is why, personally, I think that what President Tshisekedi did when he visited Rwanda, not only to engage his Rwandan counterpart, but also to pay respects to those who perished during the genocide, was a very statesman-like gesture. It took good leadership to be able to stand up and be counted, okay? To stand on the side of the victims of the genocide and to say, this isn't right. And his expression of interest to working with his brothers in the region to build peace. That is the language that we seek. And that is what we would like to see coming from the countries that you referred to that may be siding or aiding those who seek to destabilize our country. But like the president said, we have gone through a very difficult time. We have learned very, serious lessons. And we have dedicated ourselves to ensuring security in our country, as well as contributing to peace building within our region and within the continent.
Can I, sorry to interrupt you, can I ask you very directly, with regards Eastern Congo, in the name of never again, do you accept that mistakes were made over the past 25 years in going after the genociders? Yes, they fled across the border, but in that process, getting entangled and getting embroiled, and either through funding militias or sending forces across, people were killed, minerals were looted, and that a lot of Congolese have a point when they're not too happy with the Rwandan government under Kagame. Were mistakes made?
Let's step back. One, we did not go to Congo to attack the Congolese or to loot their minerals. We have no interest in that. Not to destabilize Congo, not to loot their assets.
But
we regard them our
happened.
brothers.
It had happened.
It did not happen. We went into Congo to disband a genocidal regime that had killed 1 million+ people in our country, rooted our country, and moved the government into Eastern Congo with the knowledge of the Congolese government of the day. And it has been determined, even through the UN, that this, what was supposed to be a refugee camp, was actually a military base that was set up by these genociders who had intentions to come back and complete the work that they had done within the country. And our government, after 1994, requested the UN to disband this setup that was set up, the setup in Eastern Congo, composed of this former government who had perpetrated the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And when they did not do that, and because our government regarded them as a security threat, our forces went to go and disband this makeshift military operation that had been set up.
Given the bird's eye view of history now, and we can look back at the timeline, do you believe that no mistakes were made during that process?
In every war situation, mistakes happen, okay? But the intention of going to Congo was not driven by ill will of the Rwandese government against the Congolese people. Okay. It was driven by a desire by the Rwandese to secure its own borders and to contain what it saw as an existential threat.
Understood.
And we have seen governments, other governments, travel into countries way beyond their borders to go and fight people that they regard as their enemies.
Absolutely. Okay.
For us, this was right on our border.
Okay.
They were armed. They were prepared to return and complete the horrific destruction of human life that they had perpetrated before the Rwanda Patriotic Front stopped them. And we had a duty to safeguard our people and our country by disbanding this particular setup. And today, and I think this is the conversation that my president and President Tshisekedi had when they met, we have no ill will against the Congolese.
It was a tremendous symbolic moment in late March. Let me ask the man from the opposition, Frank. Frank, is your party on board with the foreign policy of Paul Kagame and how he has led the country vis-a-vis its neighbors and how Rwanda sees itself in the world?
Well, we have not been comfortable with the part of the foreign policy, especially with our neighboring countries, Congo, and Burundi. For us, we put much focus on issues of peaceful means of conflict resolution, whereby people could be able to sit together and negotiate and finish whatever problem is there. So that's what is always our message, as encouraging the government to talk to all those people whom they don't agree with, or those countries they have issues with. But then we have issues, of course, that like as the ambassador has mentioned, that when you have armed groups, very active armed groups, like in Congo, we have the armed groups and who are part of the genocide. Those as extraordinary circumstances, which need also extraordinary means. So myself, I'm also some kind of expert in war issues. At least I did some courses in that. I would think that some of the issues they've done maybe would have been justified. Because the issue of Congo was very difficult to deal with. But if I say the issues we have with Uganda and Burundi, I strongly advise the government to always find peaceful means of conflict resolution. And I always pray that they should never reach a level of fighting with each other.
Alex Ntung, you've heard from the ambassador and you've heard from a member of the opposition here. Tell me what that sounds like to Congolese ears when it comes to Rwanda's reasons for needing, in their opinion, to go into Eastern Congo.
There's no doubt. From 1996 to last 3 years, there have been different rebel groups from in times of Laurent Kabila to CNDP and M23, where neighboring countries have supported those movements. Congo has constantly accused Burundi, Rwanda, and Uganda for interfering in its affairs, and either by supporting, by intervening militarily or supporting those groups I've just mentioned. The beginning, the first intervention was incredibly different to the last two. The first one was imminent threat just following the genocide in 1994. Rwanda was facing, and this is something that that really Congo has not had almost a chance to address and recognize. At that time, there were, as the ambassador mentioned, there were many refugee camps around around Rwanda in the Goma area. Rwanda had warned the UN, and at that time they were speaking with the DRC, the DRC government, Kengo Wadondo at that time, really trying to address the issue between both the countries. But that did not happen. Going forward, the two other rebel groups that really emerged were mainly around the relationships between both the countries that was deeply contentious, and whereby that's where some other agendas could have been involved in. There is no way we can fit the justification of the first intervention of Rwanda in the DRC with the two groups that invaded.
Okay, and I'm going to get the ambassador to respond to that in just a second. Just a second, ambassador, and you're going to get a chance to fully respond to that. I just want to get Christoph to add to that. I want to ask you, Christoph, in a nutshell, how would you define Kagame's foreign policy, or his regional policy at the very least? Is there a way to define it? Does it have a certain purpose and style?
Well, it's probably too long of a question to give a full analysis of President Kagame's or Rwanda's foreign policy, especially through the last 25 years or so. Very much in a nutshell, I see two main streams. One has been obviously a security imperative that has led President Kagame, but also Rwanda as a country to mount a very defensive foreign and security policy with the aim of dismantling and demobilizing the remnants of the forces that carried out the genocide. A second very important stream as well, unrelated to security, is his major push for regional and continental integration, which has become much more visible in the past 5 to 10 years, through the EAC and through the AU, especially through the push for a continental free trade agreement. So it's not just security imperatives; it's also a broader push for economic integration, especially in Eastern Africa.
Okay. Let me ask the ambassador. Alex said there's a difference between the first intervention and the next two. You disagree with that?
Yes, I do. Because Alex seems to think that the genocidal forces that moved into Eastern Congo have left. They are still there. The recent UN report actually pointed at the emergence of another rebel group called P5. So Eastern Congo is still used by these rebel elements, okay, as a staging ground to destabilize Rwanda. So Rwanda is going to always remain interested in what is happening in Eastern Congo. And I repeat, not because we hold any ill will against the Congolese people or against the Congolese state, but because we are interested in our own security, and unfortunately, a lot of this insecurity seems to be coming into Rwanda through Eastern Congo. If you have followed the news reports, there are, military skirmishes and incursions out of Eastern Congo that regularly cross into Rwanda. That particular security threat is there, and we remain interested. But we hold no ill will against the Congolese people and would like to work with them to ensure that security across our borders is much more robust and much more strong, so that we do not see any threat to them or a threat to us from their own space. Now, with regard to our foreign policy, Rwanda is very passionate about our own internal security, particularly given the special circumstances that underpin our history. The genocide happened. The forces that orchestrated the genocide, some of them, those elements still exist. And they still have friends that want to continue, fueling these, primitive emotions that seem to suggest that you can actually pursue an ideological and a genocidal ideology and live with it. It is something that all of us around the world should fight. But beyond the interest in securing our internal security, President Kagame and his government has been very clear about our commitment as a country to peace within the continent and to peace within the world. That is why today Rwanda is the third largest contributor to UN peacekeeping operations around the world. It is important that one remembers that when the genocide was happening in Rwanda, the international community was completely disinterested. The UN reduced its presence in Rwanda.
Right. Okay, and let me build on that then, because it seems as if your President Kagame has held some ill will towards the French over the years based on his statements. The French have been blamed by many Rwandans and others for allowing it to happen, for allowing 1 million people to be killed. Emmanuel Macron has come back and said, I'm going to order a 2-year investigation into the French role in the genocide. Is that going to satisfy your president?
Our interest is for responsible leaders who had a role in the commission or aiding the commission of a genocide in Rwanda to own up. But that is their decision. And we will wait to see what comes out of this particular initiative before we can take a view. We will not make demands on anyone. We think that the best service that we can do to ourselves as a people, and this is what the president has said, is we need to own our own condition, find solutions that bring Rwandans together.
Ambassador Williams Nkurunziza, Alex Ntung, Christoph Vogel, and Frank Habineza, thanks for joining us here on the Newsmakers.